It's good to stay away even from romance novels because a lot of times those just stir up desires in our heart as young ladies that cannot be righteously fulfilled.
We don't always use the term courtship because that's kind of broad. So we kind of call it dating with a purpose. And it really means that you're not just going to go frivolously here, date this person, date that person, and like give away pieces of your heart to these different people. You're going to purpose to save your heart for one person and then date with a purpose.
A source who was personally close to Kendra Duggar, Joy Duggar, and multiple families in the Northwest Arkansas Duggar Circle has come forward, and what they are sharing is going to reframe everything you thought you knew about this family, about these marriages, about the door locks, and about Kendra's health. And I want to walk you through every single piece of this, because it all connects and it all matters. This source was part of one of the families that Jim Bob Duggar recruited to move to Northwest Arkansas. And yes, recruited is the right word, because what Jim Bob was doing was deliberately and systematically building a compound, a cult, a following, by going to families across the country and pitching them on the idea of moving to Northwest Arkansas, where property was cheap, where their children could find spouses within the group, where they could homeschool together, go to church together, and build a community together. And the pitch was effective because it targeted families who were looking for exactly that kind of belonging and structure. And once they moved and became embedded in the community, and their children became friends with the Duggar children, and their social and financial lives became intertwined with the Duggar world, leaving became nearly impossible. Now, this source was close enough to Kendra to give us the most detailed and human portrait of her that we have ever had. And what they describe is a Kendra Duggar who before her marriage was genuinely warm and social and nurturing. She was the girl everyone confided in. She was a good listener. She had a wonderful relationship with her mother and talked to her about everything. She loved her younger siblings. She took her role as the oldest daughter seriously, and she loved helping her mom. And she was also apparently a bit of a gossip, in the most affectionate sense of the word. The kind of person who just loved to know what was going on and loved to connect with people. And that version of Kendra, that warm, engaged social girl, is almost unrecognizable compared to the disconnected, checked-out woman that neighbors and sources have been describing in the years since her marriage to Joseph. And understanding what happened to that girl requires understanding exactly what Joseph Duggar did to her, physically, medically, and psychologically over the course of their marriage. Here's what this source revealed about Kendra's health. And I want to spend some time on this because it is deeply important and has never been fully reported. After Kendra had her first child, Garrett, she was diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease, which is hypothyroidism. And she also developed severe anemia as a direct result of the Hashimoto's. And for anyone who is not familiar with what untreated hypothyroidism does to a person's body and mind, I want to be very specific because the symptoms explain so much about everything we have been seeing from Kendra. Untreated hypothyroidism causes profound fatigue, extreme sensitivity to cold, muscle weakness, muscle aches and joint pain, depression, memory problems, cognitive impairment that can progress to dementia-like symptoms, slowed heart rate, weight gain, dry skin, thinning hair, constipation, and an inability to regulate body temperature. And in its most severe untreated form, it can cause a medical emergency involving hypothermia, extreme lethargy, profound confusion, and loss of consciousness. And it can cause irreversible cognitive damage if left untreated for long enough. And I speak about this with personal knowledge because my own son was diagnosed with no thyroid function at 3 months old and almost died from the consequences. And I can tell you that watching someone you love suffer from untreated hypothyroidism is one of the most heartbreaking things imaginable because the treatment is so simple. A daily pill, a blood test every few months, and proper medical supervision. And yet Joseph Duggar apparently preferred that Kendra not take her medication, was unsupportive of her treating it, and created an environment where she was inconsistent with her treatment. And this source says her friends and loved ones believe she is not properly treating her Hashimoto's right now, and that much of what people have been observing about her, the cognitive fog, the seeming inability to put things together, the confusion, the appearing to not fully understand her own legal situation, is a direct symptom of years of untreated thyroid disease combined with severe anemia. And here's the thing that makes this so much more sinister than just medical neglect. This source said that one of Kendra's friends described Joseph as someone who thrived off of Kendra being weak, who liked having a partner who was sick and depleted and cognitively impaired. Because a woman who cannot think clearly, cannot assess her situation accurately, a woman who is exhausted and in physical pain cannot advocate for herself effectively. A woman whose thyroid is not functioning cannot maintain the mental clarity needed to recognize that what is happening to her is abuse, and to make the decisions necessary to escape it. And Joseph kept getting Kendra pregnant cycle after cycle after cycle, knowing that each subsequent pregnancy would cause her Hashimoto's to flare and her anemia to worsen, and her body to become more depleted. And after each pregnancy, instead of allowing her to rest and recover and stabilize her treatment, he would push her into another pregnancy before she had recovered from the last one, so that she was in a perpetual state of physical deterioration. And that is not accidental, that is a control strategy. And it is one of the most insidious forms of abuse, because it uses the woman's own body against her. And the IBLP belief system that underlies everything in this community made the medical neglect even easier to maintain, because this source confirms something that has been reported before, but never with this level of detail. Jim Bob Duggar allegedly counsels people in his circle not to seek medical treatment, telling people with cancer not to pursue chemotherapy or radiation, but to pray and trust God to heal them. Telling people with high blood pressure not to take medication, telling people with diabetes not to treat their condition, and multiple people who followed that advice and did not seek medical treatment for serious illnesses have died from conditions that could have been treated and managed. And this is not a peripheral issue. This is Jim Bob playing God with the lives of the people under his influence, and it flows directly from Bill Gothard's IBLP teaching that illness is a spiritual problem rather than a medical one, that hypothyroidism, or cancer, or diabetes are not medical conditions requiring treatment, but are symptoms of sin and moral failure. That if you are sick, it is because you are greedy or lustful or spiritually deficient, and that prayer and Bible study and IBLP seminars are the appropriate response rather than doctors and medication. Now let me get to the door locks, because this source gave us the most detailed and definitive account of how the locking practice works in this community that we have ever had, and it is both more widespread and more specifically traceable to a source than anything we have previously known. This source confirmed that door locks are used throughout the Duggar community, but clarified that they are not on the doorknobs the way some photos have suggested. They are installed at the top of the door so that an adult can lock the door from outside through a lock at the top of the frame, and when asked why they use this method, the source gave an answer that is both mundane and deeply disturbing. Naps. The locks were originally justified as a way to keep children in their rooms during nap time so that if the child climbed out of their crib or their bed, they could not leave the room. And the logic presented was that the child could play safely in their room and would not get hurt. But the honest assessment this source gave is that these are lazy parents who want their kids to sleep a certain amount of time so they can have free time without being parents. And locking the door is easier than actually parenting. And it is not just nighttime confinement, but daytime confinement during naps and whenever the parents do not want to be bothered. And here is the detail that stopped me cold. This source said that the practice of locking children in their rooms was introduced to the Duggar family circle by Josh and Anna Duggar, that Josh and Anna were the two people who brought this method into the community and promoted it. And when you think about who Josh Duggar is, and what he has been convicted of, and what we know about him, the idea of Josh Duggar locking his children in their rooms takes on a dimension that is profoundly disturbing. And this source also shared that Josh and Anna's children are visibly troubled. They are skittish and scared of people. They are terrified of being touched. Their behavior is unusual and alarming to people who spend time around them. And this source said, in their personal opinion, those children show serious signs of abuse. And from Josh and Anna, the practice spread. Joy and Austin Forsyth were described as two of the biggest proponents of locking children in rooms, actively promoting the method to other families in the community and encouraging everyone to adopt it. And Kendra and Joseph were also using it. And the picture that emerges is of an entire community of parents who have been told they must have as many children as possible, but who are fundamentally not interested in actually being parents, who are using institutional methods of confinement to manage children they did not want to have and do not want to engage with, and who have all learned from each other that this is normal and acceptable and even righteous behavior within their belief system. Now let me tell you what this source shared about how the Duggar marriages were actually arranged, because this is something that has been speculated about for years, but never confirmed with this level of detail. By 2019, Jim Bob was in urgent need of finding spouses for his remaining sons, because Josh was under investigation, and Jim Bob could see that the window for finding willing families was closing. And according to this source, Jim Bob would approach families who had multiple daughters and essentially pitch them on the opportunity of having their daughter marry a Duggar son, promising them that their daughter would have a more comfortable and affluent life than she had ever known, that she would go on trips, have nice cars, have financial security, be part of a television show. And this pitch was specifically targeted at families who were not financially stable, because those families were easier to control. And Jim Bob would not allow a marriage to proceed unless he had leverage over either the prospective son-in-law or the girl's father, meaning he wanted either dirt on the young man marrying into the family, or he wanted the ability to control the girl's father. And if he assessed a potential father-in-law as someone he could not control, or who was too independent or too principled to be managed, he would veto that marriage and move on. And this vetting process ultimately led to what the source described as arranged marriages between Jed and Katey Duggar, and between Justin and Claire Duggar, both of which were orchestrated by Jim Bob with leverage and control as the primary selection criteria rather than compatibility or genuine affection. And now, Joy and Austin. This source was asked directly about Austin Forsyth and why he continues to maintain close friendships with men in this community who have been accused of or charged with sexual abuse of children, including Joseph Duggar and a friend who has been accused of abusing his sister. And this source's answer was stark and unambiguous. They said that men like this run in packs, that they protect each other's secrets, that they will go to the mat for each other, and that if Austin is riding with these men and maintaining those friendships, there is probably a reason for it. And while they said they have no specific allegation against Austin, they said every single Duggar son is a creep, and that Austin's continued loyalty to these men tells you something about who Austin Forsyth is. And given that Austin and Joy were housing Kendra while she was evading investigators, given that Joy and Austin use the same door locks that Joseph and Kendra are charged with using, given that DCFS has already visited their home, and given that Joy and Austin have now taken a trip to Washington, D.C. without their children, in a way that people who know them say is completely out of character, the question of what is happening in Joy and Austin's house is one that deserves a serious and thorough answer from investigators. And the final piece of this that I want to address is Kendra herself, because after everything this source shared, the Hashimoto's, the anemia, the medical neglect, the cognitive impairment, the cycle of pregnancies that kept her body depleted, the partner who thrived off her weakness. What emerges is not a picture of a villain, but of a profoundly sick and profoundly controlled woman who was set up to fail by every system and every person around her, who was never given the education, or the medical care, or the emotional support that would have allowed her to be the mother her children needed, and who is right now making decisions about her legal future while her thyroid disease is allegedly untreated and her cognitive function is significantly impaired, which means she may not even be capable of making fully informed rational decisions about divorcing Joseph or cooperating with prosecutors or prioritizing her children. And that does not excuse the harm done to those children. Nothing excuses that. But it does mean that the most important thing that could happen for Kendra right now is for her to get genuinely independent legal representation, proper medical treatment for her Hashimoto's and anemia, and distance from every person in the Duggar orbit who has a stake in keeping her sick, confused, and compliant. Because the woman that this source described before her marriage, warm, social, nurturing, close to her mother, full of life, deserves the chance to find out if any of that woman is still there.